Good evening, children. Welcome to online class 10th standard, first language English. Today, we will learn the lesson, fifth lesson, what is moral action. This lesson is written by M.K. Gandhi, that is Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi. You must be knowing about him very well because he is father of our country and he is born on 2nd October 1869 in the princely state of Porbandar, now part of Gujarat. After matriculation, he went to England to study law in 1888. Having passed his bar examinations, he returned to India in 1891, only to proceed to South Africa, where he hoped to do better as a lawyer than in his own city. The future Mahatma was actually made here in the land of racialism and acquired a new weapon to fight the white oppressor. This was Satyagraha, which subsequently in India was to be reinforced with truth and non-violence, and with which he won freedom from the British Empire until his assassination in 1948. Gandhiji's efforts were to wean his contemporaries away from wickedness, and rightly he remained the conscience of mankind. So in this lesson also, he is telling about moral action. So what is moral action? That's throughout this lesson, then he is trying to explain what is moral action. Moral action, nothing but it involves taking the necessary steps to transform the intent to do the right thing into reality. That is called a moral action. In this lesson, then he asks how to define a moral action. So we'll go through the first para. That is, when can it be said that a particular action is moral? In asking this question, the intention is not to contrast moral with the immoral actions, but to consider many of our everyday actions against which nothing can be said from the conventional standpoint and which some regard as moral. Most of our actions are probably non moral. They do not necessarily involve morality. For the most part, we act according to the prevailing conventions. Such conventional behavior is often necessary. If no such rules are observed, and would be the if no such conventional behavior, if no such rules are observed, anarchy would be the result, and social intercourse would come to an end. Still, the mere observance of custom and usage cannot properly be called morality. So he is trying to tell in the first para how to define a moral action. So he is telling it does not mean that he is comparing between the moral and the immoral actions. That is, he feels that many of our everyday actions, which are accustomed to do, may be regarded as moral, but most of them are non-moral actions as they, do not involve morality, but they are required and necessary also. If they are not observed, anarchy would be the result. That is, the social intercourse would come to an end. So he says that merely observing such customs and usage cannot be called morality. Now we'll go further. Second week we'll see. Second para. A moral act must be our own act, must spring from our own will. If we act mechanical, there is no moral content in our act. Such action would be moral if we think it proper to act like a machine and do so. Or in doing so, we use our discrimination. We should bear in mind the distinction between acting mechanically and acting intentionally. It may be moral of a king to pardon a culprit, but the messenger bearing the order of a pardon plays only a mechanical part in the king's moral act. But if the messenger were to bear the king's order, considering it to be his duty, his action would be a moral one. How can a man understand morality who does not use his own intelligence and power of thought, but lets himself be swept along like a log of wood by a current? Sometimes a man defies convention and acts on his own with a view to that is doing absolute good. Such a great hero was Wendell Phillips. So he is for this photo is Wendell Phillips. Addressing an assembly of people, once he said, "Till you learn to form your own opinions and express them, I do not care much what you think of me." Thus, when we all care only for what our conscience says, then alone can we be regarded to have stepped on to the moral road. We shall not reach this stage as long as we do not believe and experience the belief that God within us, the God of all, is the ever present witness to all our acts. So, second para is asking what is moral action? The action should be our own and should spring from our very will, our own will. That is desire. If we act without our conscience, it is called a mechanical. When we do it with our conscience, it becomes moral because we use our discrimination. So, what is the difference between acting mechanically and acting intentionally? For a king, to pardon a culprit may be a moral act. The messenger who brings that order of a pardon plays only a mechanical part. When he thinks that is his duty, his action becomes a moral one. A man who does not have intelligence and power of thought won't be able to understand morality. It becomes like a log of wood swept by a current. Sometimes man goes against the custom to do good to others. Such a great hero is Wendell Phillips. Such a great hero is Wendell Phillips, who went against the custom. That is what is he? He is an American orator and a social reformer. He opposes slavery and he was not worried of others' opinions as long as they did not respect their conscience. So we have to care only for what our conscience says. Then only we are stepping on to the moral road. How can you reach this stage? When we believe that God is within us and God is ever present, witnessing all our actions. So that time only we can reach this stage. Third one is telling Paroi, it is not enough that an act done by us is in itself good. It should have been done with the intention to do good. That is to say, whether an act is moral or otherwise depends upon the intention of the doer. Two men may have done exactly the same thing, but the act of one may be moral and that of the other the contrary. Take, for instance, a man who, out of great pity, feeds the poor, and another who does the same, but with the motive of winning prestige or with some such selfish end. Though the action is the same, the act of the one is moral and that of the other non moral. The reader here ought to remember the distinction between the two words, non moral and immoral. It may be that we do not always see good results flowing from the moral act. While thinking of morality, all that we need to do is all that we need to see is that the act is good and is done with a good intention. The result of an action is not within our control. God alone is the giver of fruit. Historians have called Emperor Alexander Great. Wherever he went, that is in the course of his conquest, he took the Greek language, Greek culture, arts, and manners. And today we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization. But the intention of Alexander behind all this was only conquest and renown. Who can therefore say that his actions were moral? It was all right that he was termed great, but moral he cannot be called. So the third part is telling a good action should be done with a good intention. For an example, a man feeds the poor out of great pity, and another does the same with the motive of winning prestige with a selfish end. Though the action is the same, the first one act is moral and the other one is non-moral. What is the distinction between the two words, non-moral and immoral? We cannot expect always a good result from a moral act. According to morality, we have to do good work done with a good intention. But the result is not within our control. God alone is the giver of a fruit. For example, the emperor. So he is the Emperor Alexander. He is Emperor Alexander the Great. Wherever he took, he went with the Greek language, Greek culture, Greek arts, and Greek manners. Today, we enjoy the benefits of Greek civilization, but the intention of Alexander behind his invasion was only conquering the lands, becoming famous, and becoming great also. So he became great, but he cannot be called as moral because Alexander the Great of Macedonia, son of Philip II, was one of the greatest conquerors of the world. So even though he can be called as a that is great, but he cannot be called as a moral person. Now, fourth parastelling, these reflections prove that this is not enough for a moral act to have been done with a good intention, but it should have been done with a good without a compulsion. There is no morality whatever in my act. If I rise early out of the fear that if I am late for my if I am late for my office, I may lose my situation. Similarly, there is no morality in my living a simple and unpretentious life. If I have not the means to live otherwise, but a plain, simple living would be moral. If though wealthy, I think of all the want and misery in the world about me and feel that I ought to live a plain, simple life and not one of ease and luxury. So, likewise, it is only selfish and not moral of an employer to sympathize with his employees or to pay them higher wages lest they leave him. It would be moral if the employer wished well of them and treated them kindly, realizing how he owed its prosperity to them. This means that for an act to be moral, it has to be free from fear and compulsion. When the peasants rose in a revolt and with bloodshot eyes went to King Richard II of England demanding their rights, he granted them their rights under his own seal and signature. But when the danger was over, he forced them to surrender the letter. It would be a mistake for anyone to say that King Richard at first act was King Richard's first act was moral and the second immoral. For his first act was done only out of fear and had not an iota of morality about it. So what is the fourth foretelling? From the above example, that is all about Venda Phillips and Alexander, we came to know that a moral act done with a good intention is not enough, but should be done without a compulsion. If I get up early to reach my office in time, that is not moral. You do because you lose your situation or a job. So being a poor man, if he leads a simple life, that is not moral. Because he has to live a plain and a simple life. Likewise, if a wealthy man leads a simple life, remembering the misery of the world, that is moral. In the same way, an employer sympathizes with his employees and pay them a higher salary, higher wages to keep them with him. Only that is not moral act. It would be moral if the employer wishes well of them and treats them, realizing that his prosperity depends on them. For an act of moral, it has to be free from fear and compulsion. Here, he has given one more example of a King Richard II of England. He granted the rights to the people who rose in revolt. When the danger was over, he forced them to surrender the letters. The king's first act was moral and the second is immoral. The first act was done only out of fear. Now, fifth vara, just as the moral action should be free from fear of compulsion, so should there be no self-interest behind it. This is not to say that actions prompted by self-interest are all worthless, but only that to call them moral would detract from the that is dignity of the moral idea. That honesty cannot long endure, which is practiced in the belief that it is the best policy. As Shakespeare says, love lorn out of the profit and motive is no love. So fifth paras, Gandhi is explaining, moral action should be free from compulsion and also there should be no self-interest behind it. So it does not mean that self-interest actions are worthless, but it will lose its dignity of the moral idea. If honesty is practiced in the belief that it is the best policy, then it will not last long. It should have no self-interest in act. So Shakespeare, then he says King Richard II. So what is that? And Shakespeare says, love born out of a self-interest is no love. Now sixth para, just as an action prompted by the motive of material gain, here on earth is non-moral. So also another done for considerations of comfort and personal happiness in another world is non-moral. That action is moral which is done only for the sake of doing good. A great Christian Saint Francis Xavier passionately prayed that his mind might always remain pure. For him, devotion to God was not for enjoying a higher seat after death, He prayed because it was man's duty to pray. The great saint Teresa wished to have a torch in her hand and a vessel of water in her left, so that with the one she might burn the glories of heaven, and with the other extinguish the fires of hell. And men might learn to serve God from love alone, without fear of hell and without temptation of heavenly bliss. To preserve morality thus demands a brave man prepared to face even death. It is cowardice to be true to friends and to break with the enemies, break faith with the enemies. Those who do good out of fear and haltingly have no moral virtue. Henry Clay, known for his kindliness, sacrificed his convictions to his ambition. Daniel Webster, for all his great intellect and his sense of the heroic and the sublime, once sold his intellectual integrity for a price. So, by a single mean act, he wiped out all his good deeds. This shows how difficult it is to judge the morality of man's action, because we cannot penetrate the depths of his mind. We have also the answer to the question raised at the outset of this chapter: what is a moral action? Incidentally, we also saw which kind of men could live up to that morality. So, children, he is a Francis Xavier and he is a Henry Clay. And she is a Mother Teresa. This photo when she was young. So this last para is explaining act done with the motive of material gain is non-moral. And also for considering comfort and personal happiness is another non-moral. The act done only for the sake of doing good is moral. So a great Christian, Saint Francis Xavier, he prayed that his mind always should remain pure. His devotion to God was not for enjoying a higher seat after death. He prayed because it was man's duty to pray. Again, he gives one more example of Mother Teresa, who was holding a torch in her right hand so that she might burn the glories of heaven, and a vessel of water in her left hand to extinguish the fire of hell. Her message for humanity is to serve God for love alone, without fear of hell and without a temptation of heavenly bliss. To preserve morality, even a brave man must be ready, prepared to face death. It is common to be true to friends and breaking faith with enemies, but that is a cowardice act. Those who do good out of fear have no moral value. Henry Clay, that is 1777 to 1852, an American statesman and orator, sacrificed his principles for the sake of winning support for his candidature, that is for presidency. And David Webster, he wiped out all his good deeds by selling his intellectual integrity for a price. So, it is very difficult to judge the morality of man's actions because we cannot penetrate the depth of his mind. Through this lesson, we have learned what is a moral action and also saw which kind of man could live up to that morality. So thank you children, it's a very nice lesson on moral action. You have to go through twice, thrice like this so that you'll understand very nicely, but very beautiful lesson.